Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we're going to talk about the Middle East. Why is that so? We're in the month of October, and I remember on October 7, 2023, the conflict in the Middle East started. And Hamas attacked Israel for reasons that, quote unquote, some say are justified. And now 1 year is over. And where has this conflict taken us in the Middle East? The United States still supports Israel. There is a crisis in Gaza. 60% of the population has been injured. And of the population that are injured, most of them are young males above 18, women, and children. Schools and hospitals are closed. In fact, only 9 of the 15 hospitals are functioning. People have lost their livelihood. The economy is in shambles. And yet Hamas is still fighting. On the Israeli front, Netanyahu is having a field day. There's nobody to stop him. And he continues with the support of the Americans. In the meantime, the Hezbollah, of course, and the Hamas and the Houthis are continuing to fight as if it doesn't really matter how much tragedy they are confronted with. They will continue to fight what they call a nation that seeks to oust them from their homelands, from the Palestinians from their homeland. Now the Iranians have got into the conflict. And recently there was an attack of 200 missiles on the Israelis, and the IDF thought that they are impregnable. That's not the case. Attempts, Blinken says, have been made to resolve the crisis. A near proposal, they say, was almost to be accepted, but Hamas has denied it. Even the Israelis are not ready to resolve the issue. So where will this conflict go? And recently, as I am told, that there was a cyber attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities. So if this escalates further, it's going to create problems for the Middle East. And we have 3 extraordinary people to discuss this issue on Dil Se today. We have Saeed Naqvi, and he's been in this program before, so we're going to visit Middle East again.
Thank you.
And he has been what? He's been in the system for 6 decades, 60 years. You've been in the business of reporting.
Say that. Well, yes.
It's true. It is true. And I think that there's hardly a significant leader in the global community who you have not interviewed, from Nelson Mandela to Fidel Castro to Muammar Gaddafi to Henry Kissinger to I can go on, Benazir Bhutto to Hamid Karzai and Simon Peres and Gorbachev and whoever. And you also lived in the ashram.
Well, from the sublime to the, well, not ridiculous exactly.
Yeah, when the Beatles were around,
but
right?
Thank God I never met Blinken.
And you started as a correspondent in 1997 with the Indian Express as a special correspondent. 79 to 84, you were heading the editor. You were the editor of the Indian Express, a foreign editor. And then, of course, 1986 till 1987, you did a world report for Doordarshan, I think, and which was watched by all of us. I used to watch it at one time. You've written in The Guardian and Sunday Times and Washington Post, Boston Globe, New York Times. And of course, you've written 2 books now, Muslim Vanishes. You've given talks. So you are well conversant with the region, and therefore we'd love to have your inputs with us. Dr. Wael Awad, his history is extraordinary. I mean, he came here, did a postgraduate in MBBS, right?
Yeah.
And then you did journalism at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, and you decided to become a journalist. And you're from Syria.
Yeah.
And the one wonderful story about Dr. Awad is that he was captured by the Iranians, by the Iraqis for 10 days.
Yeah.
And he thought that he would be beheaded. And suddenly, because he was part of the U.S. forces, embedded journalist in the U.S. forces when Iraq was being attacked. And then I think some of them realized that no, they had probably seen you as a correspondent on television channels. and that's how he escaped.
Yes.
But you've had these skirmishes also in Afghanistan and other places of the world. And I don't think there is an agency in the Middle East with respect to news that you are not providing inputs for.
Okay.
So that's great that you are with us today, because you know the region very well.
Okay.
We have, of course, my old friend and the one who has actually stood up to all forms of authoritarianism. They may be the Western sort of imperialist forces trying to silence the voice of the underdog and the poor and the underprivileged. Siddharth Vaidarajan, founding member of The Wire, and I think this is one channel that I think everybody, every thinking person in India watches to find out.
Not just India. Any watcher of India watches outside.
Absolutely. And this is human service that you are doing in this country. You, of course, did your economics from, I think, both Columbia as well as the London School of Economics. You did your schooling from La Martiniere in Lucknow and Mayor College, Ajmer. You were editor of The Hindu in 2013, in 11 to 2013. Then, of course, you resigned because you said it's become a family business. You've got several awards, the Ramnath Goenka Award. In 2006, you were awarded the Bernardo O'Higgins Order by the President of Chile. In 2005, the United Nations Correspondent Association awarded you with the Elizabeth Newfer Memorial Prize Silver Medal for print journalism. And what more can I say? You received in 2022 from the Mumbai Press Club Red Ink Award in politics category for articles on the Pegasus. So, and of course, you've written authored 2 books, Gujarat, The Making of a Tragedy, and Non-Alignment, Foreign and Strategic Policy for India in the 21st Century. So we have 3 extraordinary people with us today. Saeedji, is this going to end?
Well, Kapil, I think the first thing that we must take note of is, I think, impunity has crossed all borders here. We have heard what Hitler did. We know that 26 million Russians got killed in the Second World War. But these things came to light later. Even the Holocaust, and I think there will be another. There can't be a monopoly on Holocaust. I mean, the word will have to be used again. And now this is happening in real time on our television cameras. The world is watching. The other day there was a summit in Kazan. I do not know if there was any discussion on it, if there were any public statements. I do not know. No, there's an imbalance in the media coverage of things also. So certain things we know, certain things we do not. It's very telegenic. You bomb Gaza, it's very telegenic to bomb Beirut. But when people disappear from northern Israel, where are the pictures? When people are fighting, Israelis are fighting at Ben Gurion Airport to go out, and 4 million have already left. Where's the news? Where's the photographs? Where are the pictures? So we do not know where this train is going. We do not know. The world seems to have. It's दूध का दूध, पानी का पानी, कम से कम पता तो चल गया अब जाके कि ये अमेरिकन्स को, जिनको कि हमने भाई बड़ा, one had a tremendous.
But the election is on. You don't expect the presidential candidates to say anything different.
No, everything. You see, everywhere what has happened, and I don't think that is your theme. Here, what is going on is that people who conduct 60 crore, 1,000 wedding in Rajkot, they control the show. No, they control. And the Israel lobby controls this. They can control foreign statesmen in Kazan. They can influence them. This is the show that is on. The president of America, the state, in fact, Lloyd, the defense secretary, he lamented that I was not even notified that they are going to kill Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut. I was told just about the time. So therefore, we don't know where this is all going. It is It's pathetic that we in this country.
No, we know. I think the conflict has escalated. I mean, Iranians have got into the system. We know where it's going. Where it's going to end, I don't know. But where it's going, we know.
Well, I have, you've got other guests to say things. I have my own theory on that.
Yeah, I think I need just to make some small observation, because for the rest of the world, it is the 7th of October happened. And that gives me the answer to Saeed to say that 6 Jews controlling 96% of the global media. So you are, both of you are from the 4%. I'm very happy. So we can speak frankly on this. Because the problem is that the Netanyahu, when he written his book, he also wrote a book about the vision of the West Asia and the Middle East and how they see the new Middle East. And they had a plan. So the plan is already put on the table with the right-wing extremist Jewish are running the government of the coalition of Netanyahu. So he have the full control, and he wanted to drag Iran into this war. He wanted to finish Hezbollah and the resistance forces in Lebanon, because they have a doctrine. And the doctrine of Israel, which have been formed, is not that the Jews, it is the Zionist movement started in 1897. As you know, Herzl in Basel, when he started in Switzerland, he said it, you go through each and every article of the saying, it is they are implementing it. Complete a Jewish state only for the Jew, dominance Israel in the regions, the powerful regions, and then the land and the water. So what you get into the media, that it is Hezbollah, Israel, Hamas, Israel, Hezbollah, it's not. If you are fighting Hamas, you want to tell me that you were able to precisely attack Hassan Nasrallah, Ismail Haniya, Khalil Safiuddin, you killed even Sinwar, but you don't know till now, for the last 1 year, where is your prisoners whereabout? The hostages? Because you don't want the media to know that deceiving the world that you are after Hamas. But the fact of the matter is, you wanted to reoccupy Gaza Strip, and you are steering in a pot, frying the Palestinian from one angle to another. And look at the picture we get from there, that not only the bombardment, they have flattened Gaza. You have 95% of the building of Gaza is inhabitant, it's totally destroyed. You have more than 100% internally displaced people, 2.5 million people internally displaced. There's nowhere in the world. And moreover, you have the maximum number of kids killed and the largest number of amputated children in the world. That is according to UN Health Organization. Largest number of amputated legs. What are you doing there? And we are watching just the television, seeing people on IV, and they are burning the fire on them. And that's okay, normal, because it mattered only when Israeli got killed that the world woke up. But because the war was on, it never stopped. You remember in Gaza Strip from 2005, after the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, where the settlers have been removed, the war was on. And 2 days before even the 7th of October, 6 Palestinians were killed. So there was no ceasefire. The point, when you put the people inside a pot and you keep on firing at them, you cut the water, you cut the sky, you siege them from the land and the sea, what do you expect them to do? So I think it's a normal human behavior that you have to liberate. But when you have a man who is he become the colonial enclave, and this is the oldest colonial enclave in the world, called Israel, which is created by the United States and the West. So now they wanted to expand at the cost of the neighbors. When you have an American president saying that Israel is very small, it should expand, that means you have an ambition, expansion at the cost of your neighbor. When you wanted to recolonize, that's the result. So you're dragging Iran onto this war because for one reason, they wanted to draw the new Middle East order, which is the new Middle East disorder, and that's where Netanyahu is lying at the helm of power, and he's shooting at his own feet.
Siddharth, Netanyahu doesn't listen to the United Nations. He's got the Western world behind him. All of them are siding with the United States. The UN Secretary General is not heard. Nobody bothers about him. And children are being maimed, killed, women are being killed.
Incinerated, burned.
The world, and of course our part of the world, India in particular, is not even raising its voice for the kind of tragedy that is going on, other than being in any resolution that is being passed, other than abstaining. So where is this conflict going to go in the light of all this?
I think the end point, I can say with certainty, will be the creation of a Palestinian state, an end to the Israeli occupation, and full freedom and sovereignty for the people of Palestine.
Where?
No, this is the end state. I can't say this will happen tomorrow, 10 years or 100 years, but the people of Palestine are not going to give up this struggle, which means Israel as it exists today, the state which is perhaps the only state that refuses to define what its borders are as per its own legal system. A state that believes in perpetual conflict, that believes in perpetual occupation, this state cannot survive in the way it is functioning. This is the end point, and this end point will come. I think what the last 1 year has shown us, I don't agree that the West is fully united. I think the Israeli behavior this time has been so shocking to the world's conscience that in the United States, ordinary people in large numbers have had their eyes opened. They've taken to the streets, they've protested. This issue has become a divisive one, a polarizing one within the US, where as recently as a year or two ago, there was perhaps a complete consensus, not just among the political class, but even in civil society, that on the Israel-Palestine issue, the people of America must support Israel come what may. So in the US, that consensus has fractured. In the West, France, for example, wants an international arms embargo on Israel. This has never happened before. You have important West European countries that have formally recognized the Palestinian state. Spain, for example. This has never happened before. These are small but important signs of the fact that the global patience with Israel has exhausted the world's patience. This is still not enough because the world is not able to stop the slaughter, the genocide that's happening in Gaza. It's not able to stop, and I urge all of us to, and our viewers also, to pay attention to what's happening in the occupied West Bank.
That's very
where
important.
the Israelis continue to nibble away at Palestinian territory. They continue to reoccupy parts of it. They continue to visit savage violence on the people of Palestine. Now the attacks on Lebanon, the attempt by Netanyahu to provoke a conflict involving Iran. It's clear that Israel and the leadership of Israel today, Mr. Netanyahu in particular, believe their future lies in a perpetual endless conflict, and they are counting on the fact that the United States is going to bat for them. As of now, Biden, Trump, Kamala Harris, they're all in Netanyahu's corner. But I think the longer this genocide continues, the more people's eyes are open. This is going to become a much more difficult position to sustain. But you asked about India.
Yes, and I asked about the United Nations.
And so the UN, the Israelis have declared Secretary General Guterres as a persona non grata. This has never happened before. And you had a statement signed by 100 plus countries that condemned Israel for doing this, but notable exception, a notable absence from that list was the government of India.
Right.
The Modi government did not want to sign on to a statement of this kind. And the reason given, because the spokesperson was asked, the reason given is very funny. He says, well, in our eyes, he's still the Secretary General and we don't care what any other country does. But how can you not care when...
In our life?
In our eyes, he's still the Secretary General. We don't comment on what other countries are doing. So, the point is that he is the elected Secretary General of the UN. And, you can't treat the world's top diplomat in this fashion. But the government of India is quite happy with that. And this is of a piece with what I regard to be pretty shameful, the shameful policy of the Modi government. They drag their feet in the UN on discussions and votes on the call for a ceasefire. In fact, the first resolution...
In fact, on 7th October, Prime Minister Modi made a statement when the attack was made, in fact, supporting the Israel.
One can excuse that if you like, because Israeli civilians were killed, and he could have been forgiven for expressing sympathy and solidarity with the victims of that violence. But the next day it became clear that Palestinians were getting killed in huge numbers. Yes. And today it's the death toll is over 45,000.
42,000,
That's,
yes.
that's the official bombardment.
And I don't see any message of solidarity from Mr. Modi for the victims of Palestine. In fact, he loves to strut around the world saying war is not the solution. And he says this in the context of Russia and Ukraine. But has he ever picked up the phone and told Netanyahu that war is not the answer? That please stop the killing? Never. And so I think that, and India, by all accounts, is selling, one of the few countries still selling weapons. Drone parts have been exported. Explosives.
Indians themselves, some Indians have gone to Israel.
Well, Indians, and this is again, tells you the sort of immoral nature of the government's policy. After the October 7th attack last year, the Israelis decided that no Palestinians from the occupied West Bank would be allowed to work in Israel anymore. They had a labor shortage.
Right.
In order to help the Israelis tide over a labor shortage that is the result of their own apartheid policy, Mr. Modi says, I will export Indian labor. So you have tens of thousands of Indian workers being sent into what is essentially a battle zone, what is essentially an apartheid state, to essentially, to help the Israelis do whatever they do. And I think that this is really something that's quite inexplicable, that for a country that has historically stood for justice, stood for the rights of the people of Palestine, the right of self-determination, for them to now, put India in this position, I think is something which is quite unforgivable.
But if you look at the Middle East as a whole, I mean, there are countries around the Middle East who are trying to resolve their issues and trying to have fairly, relations with Israel within the Middle East itself, especially the Sunni world, right? Now, they've also somewhat backed off, right? Because they realized that they can't possibly side with the Israelis at this point in time. And so, but yet, of course, there's a conflict, the Shia-Sunni conflict is still there.
That is the one that they're building up.
That's right.
The Shia-Sunni conflict is so false because all these Shia resistance groups are actually fighting for the true blue Akhwanul Muslimin, which is Hamas, which is in Gaza. So, which is a completely false narrative that has been perpetuated. That's what, yes, it so happens that the resistance groups happen to be in countries which are Shia.
Yes.
It just so happens. Now that needs to be decoded. Tell me something. All of us here, they call everybody Amalek. Now, it's very interesting. Amalek is animals. In the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, which is what they quote, tooth for a tooth, eye for eye, is the Old Testament, which is why Jesus Christ had to be born, because otherwise it was going the other way. And it's very funny that two apartheid states that I've been familiar with, I don't know whether you remember, my first passport I do, valid for every country except for the Republic of South Africa, for Southern Rhodesia,
For Israel.
and for Israel. Now, Israel and Southern Rhodesia were more or less the same as South Africa. Then both these states, one Jewish and the other was Afrikaans, they both cited the Bible. The Afrikaans said that the blacks are the hewers and fillers of water. Hewers of wood and fillers of water. Here, they're saying, Amalek, you're all animals. We are killing animals. This is declared. They've said it again and again.
But let's forget history for a moment. I'm just talking about the reality today. And, they may view us as animals or other people as animals, is not the point. The reality today is that their own economy, that is the Israeli economy itself, has contracted from over 6% to only 1.4%. There are about 100,000 Israeli soldiers who are maimed, right? And that's continuing. And there are protests within Israel, as Siddharth mentioned. And yet, nothing is happening. And while you're right that the people of the world are realizing the reality of Israel and actually siding with the Palestinians, at least ostensibly siding, the governments are not, though of course there are exceptions of Spain and France, but they have no say in international affairs. and the United Nations being controlled by the Americans in any way. The Chinese have also not moved forward in this, if you notice. They've said,
Well, the Chinese
No,
have
but you
moved
have-
forward
no.
in a very subtle way.
yeah, but they have not done anything as far as the conflict, and they're a big power. So the Chinese are quiet, right? Other nations are quiet, and it's as if the U.S. presidency is controlling everything and what's happening in Israel, and everything is in an absolute mess. The Gazan economy has contracted 21%. There are no jobs, people are dying. The food that should be supplied is not being supplied. So what is going to happen? You say no. Ultimately, the Palestinians will get their state.
No, but
But I
right.
am afraid.
What I mean to
I'm
say
afraid.
is that
I'm afraid that's
let
not
me-
going to happen.
I'm saying that what Israel is trying to do, Israel will never achieve the victory it seeks.
Yeah, but
Right?
you know,
This may happen at a terrible cost, but the people of Palestine have said that they're going to pay it, and they will pay it.
They're
and they will
going to
not,
occupy
they will
Gaza.
not
But
allow.
listen, Kapil, may I just add to what he's saying? I totally agree with him. What were his war aims in Gaza? 2. We'll get our hostages back and total elimination of Hamas. None of those two war aims have been achieved. Now, what are his war aims in Lebanon? Complete destruction of Hezbollah, and never again will they and return of 40,000 is much more than that. 40,000 people in northern Israel who've left. Both those war aims have not been achieved. He's absolutely right. What we are getting is he's now playing for broke. And the Americans are going along with him. Why? Americans are going along with him because it's a whole strategic paradigm shift. Kazan is glaring at you. You follow, the world has changed. It is no longer. If you give me 3 minutes, I'll give you my narrative of this change. It begins with, of course, the collapse of the Soviet Union, 1992.
But
It's very
let's
important.
not, because
It's very
ultimately
important.
we'll move
I'll
away
tell you
from
why.
the topic.
Because 1992 is when Oslo also happens. That is also when South Africa opens up. Mandela comes out. 90s, after the Soviet collapse, many things happen.
But
That's very important.
Price,
I think what I need to add one point here, if you allow me to speak. Sorry to interrupt you. I think war does not solve the problem. And Siddharth is very right. In the absence of a comprehensive peace plan or a political framework to solve the problem in the Middle East, it does not exist. Because the current government of Israel, when Netanyahu torn Oslo agreement and threw it in the dustbin, and Ishaq Rabin was killed by one of his activists, and he said there is no two-state solution, that was because he wanted to go militarily. And the Oslo agreement, we had a 55% of the Israeli population who wanted peace. Currently, they don't have only 5% left of the Israelis because the right wing, the extreme settlers who came from the United States, thinking that this is their promised land. I don't know which God that we all believe in oneness of God, that he be so discriminate that he give one people their right of existence in a land where people are existing at their cost. You have spent your life in court. How can it be in any dictionary that people raping prisoners in front of the cameras, girls, boys, men, and then they capture them, the Israelis, and they take them for interrogation. And the Israelis demonstrate against the capture of them because this is legal. Where are we living? If one girl raped in India, the Indian government changed the law because this is a case of anti-woman. What are you doing to show to the world what's going on the ground? So therefore,
Exceptionalism.
there will be a peace. There will be, as long as there is a resistance. As long as Israel exists, Hamas, Hezbollah, the ideology will exist. There is a resistance to occupation. So the crux of the problem is solved the Palestinian problem if you want a settlement in the Middle East.
Yeah.
May I just add one, two? I know you are wanting to focus just on this. I will just make my point. This is not about Israel alone. This is not about Israel. The American elections are on the 5th. They don't want to go into elections with two defeats staring them in the eye. They are being defeated. They have been defeated in Ukraine. The entire American project in Ukraine is in a shambles. They don't want to go enter there, and particularly with the Israeli lobby is glaring at them that they don't want to enter these elections with two defeats glaring at them.
I understand that, but see, you keep on saying that there will be. I'm sure there'll be a resolution, but ultimately,
He's right.
At what cost? And the
When-
world will keep
when
on
these-
watching.
when these
we'll keep on
cartridges-
watching children being killed, women
When
being raped. We'll keep on
when
watching that.
Israeli cartridges have been exhausted.
95% of
That give us-
food insecurity in the Gaza.
You know something?
See,
Abhi,
Kapil, there's an easy answer to your question, which is that the only power or state with actual leverage over
It's the
Tel Aviv
United
is the
States.
United States,
Yeah.
and the US, at least now in the run-up to an election, is not going to exercise that leverage.
That's correct.
Whether they do it after the election, if Kamala Harris wins, I have my doubts. I don't think they will.
I have my doubts too.
So, Russia, China, even India, for example, I think words matter, and it's important that Russia, China, South Africa, Brazil, virtually the entire world community speaks up, except India. It's bad that India is not speaking up. But as far as the wider geopolitics is concerned, like you were saying, the role of China, like I think the Chinese have done two important things in the last year and a half, 2 years, and this, just to build on something that Mr. Naqvi was saying, rapprochement between Tehran and Riyadh. In other words, two countries that were at loggerheads for 2 decades, and it was in the American interest and the Israeli interest to make sure that Iran and Saudi Arabia remain at loggerheads. The Chinese were able to say, hang on a minute, let's talk and sort this out. And they brought the relationship up to a certain level which is stable. Second, bridge building between Hamas and Fatah, so that the Palestinian resistance is also not divided. So I think the Chinese are, doing more than perhaps other countries in terms of weakening the US geopolitical project. Don't forget, before October 7th, what was the Biden plan? The Biden plan was to keep Israel as an occupier of Palestinian territory, legitimize its existence as an occupier, and integrate it into new arrangements involving India, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Greece, and so on. So he had this vision of a corridor. And there was serious talk of getting the Saudis on board as far as the Abraham Accords are concerned. October 7th, 2023 stopped all that. And today I think it will be politically very, very difficult for even the regimes in the Middle East that have traditionally been on the US side and been reluctant to speak, to openly embrace Israel the way the US wants them to. So I think the US knows that the war cannot be a permanent fixture in this way, high intensity war. At some stage, there will have to be dialogue, negotiation, peace, discussion. That's the stage where I think the US will find that the chessboard has moved in a way that is against its own interest. But for now, sadly, the world is waiting for the US to grow a conscience and do.
I want to add one point here. It's very important. He put it very cleverly. Do you know there is a deal between Netanyahu and Trump that he wanted him to continue the war because he doesn't want to give the leverage to Kamala Harris to come to power. And he got $50 million in his campaign last time from the Israeli Jewish lobby to annex East Jerusalem. Now they have given him $100 million to annex the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So which means clear for a United States president, whoever comes to power, it doesn't make a difference. Israel has to be the dominant force and it has to remain as the powerful state. Yeah, this is one. But more importantly, if Trump comes, Trump will use the stick with cohesive sticks. There is no any more carrots with it, the United States. And he will give them the upper hand to attack Iran.
All of this, we assume that nothing will have changed when peace finally descends. Imagine peace of Elysium after it descends, after what has happened. What do you see? Now let's go back to his scenario, Siddharth's scenario. What will happen is exactly this, that here will be Israel completely in tatters in reputation worldwide for having committed genocide, which has been recorded on television, apartheid state, genocide, and
I
So who's
suspect,
won?
I suspect, and this is my view, and it's a personal view, that nothing will happen. I mean, you look at the history of the United States. How many administrations have come and gone? They've always supported Israel, whether they are Democrats or they are Republicans. They will continue to support. Why? Because there's the Jewish lobby in the United States of
No, but
America.
that- but
and therefore, Israel may not be the kind of
let us
killings
put
that
it
are taking
differently.
place will not happen. But I don't think anything will change on the ground. There will be resistance
Well,
throughout
they-
for
they
years.
pay- they pay every
that's
senators
number one.
in the United
and on
States.
Riyadh and the rapprochement that you're talking about between Riyadh and Tehran, that's because Riyadh can no longer continue to take the positions that it's been taking for years, because they realize they can't be on the wrong side of public sentiment around the Muslim world. So there is an inherent, in a sense, that they have to take that position. The rapprochement is there, but the rapprochement, that kind of rapprochement is also not a permanent rapprochement. This is my own view on the subject.
Let me give you 2 points here, 2 scenarios, which is, since I'm from the region and I read all them. There is a scenario where the United States already put foot on the ground.
Yes.
They are having the TAD, then they brought it. There are 20,000 British soldiers inside, fighting with Israel, which is nobody talks about it.
Yes.
There's a French, there is a German,
Yeah.
and already the warships in the region. So the war is against Iran. So this is bring you the wider perspective, where the American influence is falling from the West Asia, Middle East, where the Chinese and the Russian has come forward, and that does not for the liking of the United States and the West, because they don't want the new world order. So the worst scenario, which people talking now, is using a tactical nuclear war against Iran.
Yes.
And
That's
that
the
is
worry.
where the worry is, because Iran definitely will attack back.
100%.
And Daimuna, where Israel is already undeclared state of nuclear state in the Middle East, will have a problem and we will suffer. This is one of the scenarios. The second scenario, which is very interesting, and I think your viewers will be seeing in the coming days, when Israel start getting the hit nicely in some vital target, then they will call the whole world to come for the
Yeah, but
negotiation.
by that-
It's coming. And the more part, my last point, when they start catching their prisoners, the Israeli soldiers, watch and see what will happen in the coming days.
My problem is that Iran has said that if you attack us, we are ready to hit back.
Yeah.
And that's very dangerous for the world.
But
This is the point that I'm really worried about.
that is why the
You're all worried.
Americans are all over the place saying, please don't push the Iranians to retaliate, because they are these oil wells of our potential Arab friends, Saudis and the UAE and the Qataris. They're all right there. We have our soldiers, we have our bases there. They're all sitting ducks. So please don't provoke the Iranians beyond the point. That is the debate that is going on at the moment.
Right. So therefore, you think that the Israelis are not going to, take this
will
conflict
not
further as far as
meaningful. They will not
Iran
go.
is concerned, despite the Hezbollah and despite all that's happening.
It's not Israel fighting, it's the West. It's the West against the Chinese and the Russian and against the region. And Iran warned every neighboring country, if their airspace is
Yes.
used or American use their military bases,
correct.
they are a target. So that means global peace and security at risk, and also global trade and all
That's
that.
my worry.
It is the world order that is at stake. And this is being played out. The tragedy
There I
is
agree.
being
I think the
played out.
world order is at
Yeah.
stake. Don't you think so?
Yeah,
That?
yeah, but there's also, I would just add a domestic element in Israel, because Netanyahu has a self-interest in perpetuating this conflict, because
He'll fall
when
otherwise.
the war ends politically, he's very
He'll be
fragile.
out, he'll be out.
He is a wanted man because he's essentially already arraigned on corruption charges. When he steps down from being prime minister, he has to face a trial on all kinds of crazy petty corruption charges. So he has a vested interest. But the main thing is that it's very clear from Netanyahu's own positions, from the statements made by his ministers, that the direction in which Israel and Israeli society is heading is one where they want to formalize the apartheid structures. If they move, as I believe they want to formally annex all the occupied territories, and you're talking of creating one country of Israel within the borders of
And they'll
undivided
be- others will be
Palestine, where
minorities.
you would have people with differential rights, where the people of Palestine will not have the same rights as the people of
No doubt
people
about
of
it.
Israel.
I think that's what.
So what somebody said, that Israel can either choose to be a democracy with equal rights for everybody, or it has to give up the
This
occupation.
is what Jimmy Carter used to say all the time.
You cannot occupy other people's
But
territories.
it's happening within Israel today.
Yes, exactly.
Within Jerusalem, what you're saying is happening today. So this is what the intent of the Israelis
exactly.
is.
And I think at that point the world has to, just as the world united against apartheid South Africa and said that we are not going to tolerate this, and even if you recall, the governments in the US and the UK did not want to break ties with Pretoria.
Yes.
Right? They resisted sanctions, they resisted embargoes for the longest time, but it was a movement of people that forced their hand. And I think we are coming to a situation, and I think when this dust settles from this current genocidal war, the rulers of Israel and the rulers of the US and the UK are going to find that the pendulum of public opinion will not go back to business as usual. People are going to say that this is an apartheid state and we have to deal with apartheid Israel the way that we dealt with apartheid South Africa, which is to boycott it, to stop having any business with it, and essentially force them to give up the occupation.
Stop having business with Israel. Israel is today the second largest arms supplier to India after Russia. Now, how can we stop doing business?
No, you can stop doing business.
Well,
then-
if they are able to use civilian appliances and pagers to
Indian-
attack,
That's what
I
they're
think your
doing.
TV and a washing machine and even our phone will be at risk. So
And
who's
now-
going to buy?
And
this?
now the last point, they are now using ground forces. They went into Lebanon.
Have they?
That's what I'm
How
told.
far?
They have
I don't
not.
know.
They're
No, I mean,
not
just
gone
the
100 meters.
The border regions.
The border regions, yes.
They have been fighting for that border region how many days now?
Whatever.
That's
They're
it.
trying
The
to.
world's, the mightiest power there has not moved a few feet inside.
Yeah, but they are willing to. They have their ground forces go.
Well, that's what I said. We
They are
come back to
saying
the
that.
same start. That is the water and the land. If you look at the Israelis from 1905 when they spoke to the Patriarch of Lebanon, they told him that don't give us that part of Lebanon, don't let the Shia stay there. And by the way, when you talk of Shia, these are the Shia village. They are the people living in the ground, so they are resisting. And between 1968 to 1973, there was 2,000 attack on Lebanon from Israel. It is recorded. There was no Hezbollah,
Yes.
and there was no Iran. Revolutionary Iran, Islamic Iran. Shah was the best friend of the Israelis, and Israeli wrote to the American president, please receive the Shah because he's a friend of Israel. So let's read it beyond the headlines and find out the irony that people buy the story that Israel is vulnerable, they're fighting 7 fronts. Why you open 7 fronts? It's very simple. Implement the UN Security Council resolution, have two-state solution. Everybody wants to go and peace. Arab gave you the 2000 meeting in Beirut. They give you the plan. The King Abdullah give you the plan. Land for peace. We will guarantee. They don't want peace. That's it.
They don't want to accept. They will not that plan.
They will not
accept
do it.
They-
But this is what is happening. Siddharth, you're right. They are the defeat of the Zionist project is nigh.
That's your hope.
Zionist project. The Israelis and the Jews. Look, Ilan Pape is a Jew. Noam Chomsky is a Jew. All these.
That's okay, that's
No,
okay.
I'm saying that Jews.
We are Hindus here, and we resist all kinds of things that are done.
I'll
So
tell
that's
you my
not an
meeting.
answer.
I'll tell you my
there'll
meeting.
be lots of
I'll
exceptions.
tell you my meeting with the Hindu in King David Hotel in Jerusalem. Long years ago, I walked and he was taken aback that what is Sayyid Naqvi doing in King David Hotel in Jerusalem. That I used to go around. I was a habitually vagabond journalist, always. And who do I see? The late M.L. Sondhi. And he saw me and he thought that we were going to bond. So he took me aside and he said, Said, you understood the point. I said, what? He says, this country is surrounded by Muslim problem. And we are surrounded by a Muslim problem. Both of us have to get together and shake hands with America. And that's, everything's done. Believe you me, M.L. Sodhi then.
Well, this is the BJP's traditional
Yeah,
point
that's
of
true.
view. Yeah.
You talked about Nelson Mandela, the apartheid, South Africa. All that we talked about is okay. But the world has changed. What I find in the world today, and I may be wrong, that general people have a conscience, but governments don't have a conscience.
This is true, but I think people
But the governments do not
people are
represent the
more
people.
vocal. People are more vocal, and people have more means of being vocal today.
But the state is far more powerful today than it ever was in the past.
That's another debate.
Yes, so this is another very, very serious issue. The state
That's
is far
another
more
debate.
powerful. Governments
So people
don't have
are
a
no longer
conscience.
sovereign.
Governments don't have a conscience. People don't have
Capitalists.
The people don't have the power, like at the time when South Africa was an apartheid state, to fight the state.
I think
That's
it's a
another
people,
very
it's a people
serious
movement.
issue, and we can talk about it on another program.
exactly.
But I don't know when the conscience of the people of the world will awake to say we must stop.
Where are the representatives of the people?
That's the problem.
point.
That's the problem. But with that note, I hope there is a resolution. I don't see a resolution in the near future. And by the time that resolution comes, how many people will be killed? How many lives will be lost? How many futures will be destroyed is a global tragedy.
May I add last final word? The Zionist project will be
Well, as I said,
silenced.
that's your hope. I hope that it comes true. But the future will tell. Thank you.